Hey, we're live. Hopefully YouTube can see us. I'm pretty excited because it's the first time in a long time that Bitovi has done a live stream. We kind of took a big break during COVID, which maybe some of you watching have also had big breaks. Today, I'm very excited to talk about a CSPO, Certified Scrum Product Owner trainings that two Bitovians just took, Trent and Eileen. Trent, you want to say hello?
Hello, how's everyone?
And the other person joining us is Eileen.
Hi, guys.
These are two UXers turned product people, sort of, at Bitovi. And they recently went to a CSPO training, as I said, for two different vendors. We wanted to send people two different places, and we're gonna talk all about this. Trent, where did you attend? Which training did you do?
I took a CSPO training through Knowledge Hut.
Gotcha. And
F-
Eileen, what was yours?
I found my CSPO training through Scrum Alliance, but the provider was Powered by Teams, and my instructor was Bernie Maloney.
Cool. And Trent, who was your instructor?
Evelyn Tian.
Cool. Awesome. So if you're watching this video, this might be an interested in CSPO trainings, providing it. This might be a good thing to watch just to learn about what it looks like to learn to be a product owner at these different trainings, and maybe even pick a vendor. One thing I want to say is Bitovi is always hiring, and we obviously support training our people. So if that's something that you're looking to do is change careers or work for somewhere else, give Bitovi a shout. We have like a jobs and a people page where you can find out how to apply. So we're going to talk about Trent and Eileen's experiences, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they found valuable, any kind of secret tips that they thought were really cool, and major takeaways. But first, let's just start with like the experience. Trent, you want to walk through like what was your course layout? Like, what did what was the time frame? Kind of what is the order that the material was approached?
Right. So the day before we were to start the class, there was some pre-course material that was given, a short video on what Scrum is. And we were also given the materials that would be used in the course, such as the workbook and all the kind of associated links by the instructor. We could also go ahead and access all of that information on Knowledge Hut's kind of dashboard interface called Prism. Although the resources that we were given aren't kept there, there seems to be a section for it, but we weren't given it through Prism. She just emailed us directly. And so I was able to study those things in preparation for the class the next day. And then on the first day of instruction, which was divided up into 2 days, 8 hours each day, with an hour break for lunch and 5 to 8 minute breaks every hour or so, although not always. And it was pure instruction. She was just talking about the different aspects of Scrum and product owners and what being a product owner is. And then the second day we did kind of mock product trials where we came up with products in a group setting and worked through user stories, the kind of who, what, how, doing prioritization, and all those kind of aspects of product ownership.
So just to summarize, you did 2 8-hour days. First day was mostly about training and theory and things like that, and second day was practice.
Correct.
Cool. Eileen, how does that compare to yours?
Yeah, so my course was kind of like a week long, Monday through Friday, but Monday was just an hour-long orientation. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday were like 4-ish hours. And then Friday we had a 1-hour-long wrap up. So definitely more spread out. We did have a couple of breaks. I would say the course overall was like very collaborative. Bernie definitely had a method of like, you guys teach each other. You're all professionals. You work in this field. Like you all have knowledge to share, which was pretty cool. So we were given some pre-work material from Scrum Alliance. And that I think that information is just like out there for free. And I found it helpful, a good foundation for the course. So after orientation, the first day, we kind of got into like Scrum principles, like what is Scrum? I should also just mention that CSPO stands for Certified Scrum Product Owner, in case anyone out there needs to know. And yeah, so we just kind of got into the principles and like a general overview. And then day 2, we did this like Shark Tank exercise where we were divided into teams, and each team picked from like a prompt design challenge type of thing. And we had to kind of like come up with a product and like pitch the product. And then from there, figure out the product requirements and prioritize those requirements. And that really kind of helped us put some of those principles that we had learned on day 1 into practice. So it was a lot of discovery, validation. And then day 3, we put it even further into practice, getting more granular, talking about like backlogs, backlog refinement, planning, that kind of thing. So
Cool.
Overall, I think it was pretty organized. We used.
So I was gonna say, do you like that it was spread out? Or I guess Trent, to you, did you like that it was like 2 days for Trent and just kind of like big block, and then you could do other things, or would you have preferred it more spread out? And I guess the opposite question for Eileen.
I would say that everyone kind of learns at their own pace, and everyone comes to these trainings with like a very different, maybe different background or different, maybe some people have years of experience on others. So there are definitely times when you're thinking, this is moving so slowly, I am bored, I want to get out of here. And then there are times where you wish you could like hit the pause button because you have a question about that thing, which kind of brings me to something I was about to say, which is that we used Miro to do this entire training. And what was great was we had like a parking lot for questions, and Bernie was like very consistent about going back to those questions. And then one really cool thing that I thought was kind of cool was that it was very meta. We used Scrum practices to do the Scrum training. So we had like a Kanban board of all the tasks we had to work through. And after every few tasks, we would move them into the done category or in progress category. And then we had a burn down chart where we would be able to chart our progress throughout. And so that was just like an easy, fun way to practice that skill. But going back,
what was that in that they shared it with you? Like, was that Jira? What were they using for that Kanban board?
No, we used Miro. Apparently
Miro
there's like plugins in Miro where you can do that, which I didn't know. So that's very cool.
That's cool. Awesome. And then Trent, how was the 2 blocks of 8 hours for you?
I probably would have enjoyed it a little more had it been broken up a little bit more. Those 2 back-to-back 8-hour days is strenuous, but you get through it pretty quickly. Yeah. And it also, I mean, having those 2 8-hour days kind of back to back, she can go into certain topics a little more in depth on within a single day. You can kind of cover a breadth of information. So I did feel like she had adequate time to really answer questions and convey all the information she wanted to without having to feel like it didn't feel like the instructor was pressed for time. She would stop and answer questions pretty frequently.
Cool. So now let's get to the kind of meat and potatoes. And was this valuable? What did you learn? What did you like? And what might not you have liked or wish you hadn't learned, or was kind of boring? So Eileen, you want to talk about what you found valuable?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I found really valuable was the forced scaling of priorities. Like, there were a lot of different exercises that we did where there were maybe, like I said, that Shark Tank exercise, or just a few other analogies that we used. Anyway, a lot of exercises where we had Post-its where each post-it represented a requirement. And instead of like giving them a numeric value for importance, we ranked them. So no two items could be equally important. And we talked about like how, we would actually have a scale where we would place things, and talked about how if you're in a meeting with stakeholders, you can, pull that up. Actually, if you were in person, you might be able to get a whiteboard and like really say, okay, well, these two features can't be equal, so you have to pick one, and then they might have to like decide amongst themselves, or you can help them decide by talking about like cost, or like how long it would take to build, etc. But I thought that forced scaling was really like a good practice.
This is why sorry, just a comment on that. This is why I find that like Moscow lists are really dangerous, right? Because it says like, oh, what's a must? And then everything in the must to like the stakeholder gets grouped as, oh, it's a must. They're all the same. They're all equally important. But in reality, they're not. They rarely are. And forcing the stakeholders to think through like a completed sorted order of all of their priorities is the best way of getting like decisions actually made. So you're not just trying to build everything. So what else did you like?
One thing that I just recently was remembering at work is that I don't know that this is necessarily like a skill learned in this training, but I found it interesting that a lot of this terminology that we're using, such as backlog grooming, ceremonies, there's one other, something about master. I think you mentioned master recently.
Scrum
I was
Master.
talking about GitHub change to main.
Yes. So that actually made me think, apparently Scrum is no longer calling like these meetings, like stand up, for example, they're not called ceremonies anymore. They're called events. And backlog grooming is no longer called grooming. It's called refinement, because grooming is also a problematic term. So I think it's hard to like get out of that habit of calling it that, but that was still interesting to learn. What else?
I actually I wish they would remove like ceremonies. One problem I always have with Scrum is it's like feels very dogmatic. And when you have words like ceremonies, it makes it feel more like a religion than like, hey, we just have events that we have every week.
Yeah. And I actually sense that they're moving away from that a little bit, because like I said, day one was all about the principle. So they would keep reiterating Scrum is a framework. You can use it how you want to. So one thing that came up was like, can a product owner also be a Scrum Master? And the answer was like, yes.
So I want to ask you both a question then, and I want to hear some like what Trent liked. But for the question I want to ask you first and then move to Trent is, what is a product owner according to your training? How would you define it?
That is a great question. And I think that was one of the maybe shortcomings of the training, was that people in the beginning, when they were asked what they wanted to learn most people really wanted to clarify all of these roles.
Yeah.
And then at the end, the thing that people felt like they were left lacking was a glossary of terms. And I think that glossary of terms would help define those roles. So long story short, we didn't get like a hard and fast definition of product owner.
Yeah. So what's yours? Just put it out there. What is Eileen and Trent are going to establish what product owner means once and for all?
I think a product owner is the person who is prioritizing work, specifically like, making stories from requirements, like pointing those stories, putting them into sprints, prioritizing which stories go into the sprints, like really organizing the work is like what a product owner does, I think. And I think above that, what I've learned is that there's a product manager then who could potentially be leading a product owner to tell them which requirements are most important from the business standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the safe terminology. I think has kind of reached the I don't know, zeitgeist. I don't know what you would call it, but Trent, how do you feel about that definition?
Yeah, correct in some cases. I think in both my experience and as reiterated by the CSPO training I received, that a product owner can be that. They can be someone who does prioritization, risk management, dependency testing, those kind of things. But they can also be kind of a product vision and strategy leader in smaller teams or on smaller companies. And that's definitely what I've seen before. And they kind of decide that product roadmap and, you know, where releases will happen and what features those will include and what the kind of target MVP is, as well as those technical aspects and those that dependency related aspects. So yeah, definitely. I think
that's where, yeah, sometimes it can bleed into the project manager role, is kind of,
yeah,
Eileen was defining it. So what did you like about your training, Trent?
Our instructor was she was very communicative, like Eileen. She provided a parking lot space on a application similar to Miro called Mural, that is just kind of a whiteboard jam strategy tool, where you can post-it notes and things. And so we had that opportunity to ask her questions outside of the kind of format of doing the work, so she could keep moving things along. But also she made it accessible to everyone. It was a very international group we had, with, you know, I don't think more than like 2 or 3 people were in the same country. So there's only like a few of us who were in the US, and then the rest, some were in Canada, some were in Mexico, South Africa,
oh wow,
India, China, etc.
Like all different time zones and everything too.
Yes, very. So that was interesting, and she made it accessible for everyone, to be communicative, and so that was good. And, you know, she worked with people to help them understand things. A lot of people in there were English as a second language. She was also English as a second language. So for the folks that were having trouble understanding some concepts, she was there to make it accessible for them, which, and then we also, that was another thing we talked about, ally goals and things like that, which was another aspect that I thought was very welcoming, in addition to kind of the product owner stuff.
That's great. So what did you, Trent, what was your like key takeaway? The thing that you felt like you appreciated learning the most?
The importance of prioritization, the importance of kind of understanding how to build out a kind of product roadmap and understand, you know, those kind of greater needs, as you kind of move down the line of kind of scheduling and developing a product. So that was especially informative to me. A lot of this stuff I kind of felt like I'd picked up on over the years. So it was a great refresher, but there was also some more particular things about Scrum product ownership that I was new to me.
Cool. So yeah, it sounds like for both of you that the prioritization techniques was the kind of like the key takeaway. Now I heard, Eileen, you said one was it just simple kind of like backlog, dragging things around? Was that the primary prioritization technique that both of you like were introduced to? Were there others?
Yeah, they were all like similar in that way, I would say. Like a lot of just dragging things around. One thing that I struggled with, I guess, or that I didn't like necessarily about the training was that like it almost felt like we were being spoon-fed certain things. So for example, we would be given a backlog where all of the requirements are there and they're already pointed, and all we have to do is like put them into sprints. I'm like, but I want to know more about how these are written and how they're pointed, and how to have those conversations. And there wasn't as much
Yeah.
information about like setting up a project, which working in consulting, we do all the time, like, because we're always bouncing from one project to another and one client to another. And we want to be able to get that, like that startup, that kickoff. We want to do that really, really well here at Bitovi. So I wanted to learn more about any techniques that are out there for creating roadmaps, you know, having that bigger vision, not just jumping into the middle of a project where, you know, the whole backlog is done already, everything's pointed, and all you have to do is shove things into sprints.
Yeah, it looked like Trent got a little bit of that in his. I don't know if Trent, you can share your screen and show like, there was like a pseudo story mapping that Trent, you did. I maybe share that in a minute, but like for those watching, I love story mapping. I use Trello for it all the time. I'll probably do a video on this later, but in Trello, I'll set up like the major user flow, like end to end. Oh, you're doing e-commerce. You got to go to find a store. You got to find your products. You got to add them to a cart. You got to hit checkout, line that up, and then put all your features kind of in prioritized order under those columns. And it kind of allows you to select like the backbone of your project. So it's like, we got to build these things to go end to end as quickly as possible. So I don't know if Trent, you have that available.
Yes, I have it ready to go.
To show the material. And Eileen, was there any, so it also sounded like you had, what you were just saying about how to write stories. I often find that that's like one of the most challenging things for product owners is how do you interface with your development and engineering team to get stories in place that have what's in scope, what's out of scope, the right amount of detail so they can actually be pointed. And I don't know what that kind of training looks like. It's almost like go to a dev boot camp for a little bit so you can learn the, learn the engineering side. But Trent, you want to talk through? So this was some of the material that you saw at your.
Yes. So this is for the kind of mock product creation we did for a kind of fake family budget planning app. So we kind of defined the product. Oops. We talk about what our competitor situation is, access channels to the product, revenue streams, cost, risks, kind of run down each of those items. We determine features by establishing the kind of major feature category and then talk about sub features within those categories. We run down prioritization by business value, Cano, t-shirt sizing, and then ROI estimates, which is kind of
curious in maybe another video, to talk about how that like prioritization scale works. How
as
like t-shirt size and Kano kind of combine to some ROI number.
That is something I came back a little confused on myself. There's this kind of business value game they have you do, which I still kind of fail to understand. Maybe some other people understand it better and they can explain it to me later, but I walked away from it a little bit confused, and she did her best to kind of help me address it, but I still don't know the value in it. And then we kind of highlighted all that through user stories, kind of expressing, what that user story is, and then what the outcome or solution to that story is. So that was kind of this whole process. We were eventually going to, or supposed to get to, kind of like definition of done and story mapping. Never really got around to that, but it was included in our workbooks that we were given. So there was content available for us on that.
Great. Eileen, I don't know if you have a moment you want to share kind of like a quick snapshot of some of what the content looked like in your in the process you went through it.
Sure. So this is one example of an exercise we did. It's like a sailboat exercise. Again, we were divided into teams. So I was just trying to find the team that I was on. But a lot of these projects are very similar. So it's kind of tough to know. I think this one was ours. So basically, we had this idea, the product that we were made up was like this mobile market of like a grocery store on wheels that drives around like an ice cream truck. That's the high level summary of the product. So wouldn't that be great? Maybe not. We'd have to test it and find out. But
sure, good. Yeah, I like the early validation.
Yeah. So basically this technique is like just another way of prioritizing things. It says, let's see, things or features below the waterline are like anchors to a boat. They slow things down. They're pains. So you're really like kind of pulling out any pain points that might be like features to avoid or problems that need to be solved, right? And then like these things that would make the product great. And then later on, we did another exercise with this tree. Hold on, let me find. I think this is ours. Prune the product tree. As a group, copy the stickies from your sailboat. Arrange the features needed to launch the product lower on the tree. So this is like another way to prioritize. So right now, we just know we need a delivery schedule. We know that our users just, all they really want is just easy access to fresh food. So like, just make sure we do that first before we worry about alerting them when the truck is nearby. And then finally, maybe later on, there would be a map feature to track the truck's location. So you can kind of see that these are just these like, I think of these as like, this is a tool you can take out in a meeting. Yeah. When everyone is scrambled, it's a visual aid to bring with you in your little toolbox and like, take it out. Here's my tree. Let's get talking about these requirements. Some people like that. This was my personal favorite. It was just like a spectrum of, I'm scrolling through the PDF that was given to me from Miro, just so if anyone wants to know. This was provided to us at the end of the course. I am looking to see if there's anything else useful. I am specifically looking for, here's a project we did about a trip to Europe. And these are all the possible things you could do. And how are you going to rank these? Like, which ones are you going to do on the first day, second day, third day that you're there? If you can only do so many things in a day, how do you choose? And that was kind of getting us ready for this like sprint exercise later on, where we were given, like I said, a list of features, and they were all pointed already, and we had to put them into sprints. I'm having trouble finding the house example that I was looking for.
Oh, but yeah, they use it as an example, like building the house, which I've heard. Eileen in our pre-talk that they used an example of a house, and I was like, no, you should never use an example of house, because you like have to do all the foundational building stuff like that. You just can't put up like paper thin walls and ask like, oh, is this okay, which you should do in like a normal agile development. But then apparently they also knew that in this training and kind of called it out. So they kind of covered themselves. Like, we're going to talk about it like a house, but houses are like, house construction is a whole different thing.
Yeah, I wish I could find it, but I'm having a little trouble. But I will scroll back up to the top here and just show you guys, this was the plan for the course. And then we had a Kanban board here where everything got moved eventually into done. And as we moved them over, we were creating this burn down chart in Miro. So this is an example of a burn down chart.
Nice. So last question, because we want to just keep these to 30 minutes for both of you. Like, who would you recommend your training for, and who would you think would not need it or not find it useful? And Trent, we'll start with you.
I would recommend this to someone who wants to get through the CSPO training pretty quickly, since it's 2 8-hour days. It can be a little grueling during those 2 days, but you get pretty far along and have come out with a good understanding of the topics discussed therein fairly quickly. And for people who maybe have a little bit of familiarity with product ownership already and the concepts, it requires a little bit of that knowledge kind of coming into it, but I think you learn a lot and get a lot out of it in the end.
Awesome. Great. Eileen?
Maybe anyone who is the person prioritizing work, or facilitating that conversation, because I don't think we always have a consistent, and when I say we, I mean the industry, the world, the professional world as a whole, society. We don't have a shared understanding always of what we mean when we say project manager, delivery manager, product owner, technical product owner, product manager. There's so many terms out there. So the really important thing is to remember that Scrum is a framework and it's a collection of principles, and it's just meant to facilitate conversation and communication and organization. So I would say anyone who's like writing stories, creating sprints, cares about roadmaps, like to you, that might mean a project manager. Fine. It could also mean the like team lead on the project. Yeah. So really anyone who just like, if you hear the word Scrum and you don't know what is going on, check out Scrum Alliance.
Yeah. Do you think this would be good for people who do like implementation work, like designers and developers?
I think it could be good because sometimes people are not like abiding by those principles, or like they don't understand the importance behind it. They're like, oh yeah, stand up, who cares? Or like backlog grooming or backlog refinement, like who cares? But when you learn the Scrum framework, you realize why it is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. Definitely. I think it would be good for a lot more designers to have prioritization, especially in their practice, and understand kind of cross-functional teams and the different needs that people have. So yeah, most definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this call, Trent, Eileen, and everybody else who's watching this or watching it much later. Please put in the comments. I monitor those, get emails, join Bitovi community, which I'll also put a link in if you want to chat with either Trent, Eileen, or myself about these topics. And until next time, hopefully we'll do this again and much more often. We'll see you soon. See y'all.
Bye.
And we're out over there.